Hello, everyone. I'm not sure. Let's wait until people come in. Uh, Make sure we have a nice um, a nice group of people before we start talking too much. Uh, and once again, okay. All right. No, I don't know. All right. We are we are live. Hello, folks. Oh, Josh, that's my husband, says hi. And so we have a few people in here. And so uh, let's get this party started. Um, so, um, so hi, everyone. Hi, friends. Welcome to my Freedom Over Fascism fireside chat with your friend and mine, Marlon Weems. And today, I want to thank you for joining us, Marlon, for first.
Always.
And some of you are here live. Others, you'll see us on a video replay. And most of the people who will hear this will hear it on an audio podcast. So welcome to everybody, wherever you are. Marlon is a friend of the pod, and we'll be having a friendly conversation today where I ask him about things I'm confused about. We shoot the shit on what's going on in the world and how we can help. Most of you already know that Marlon is an expert on finance and money and the stock market and taxes and all that stuff that's relatively hazy to me. So I am glad to have him here to straighten things out. Before I get to our conversation, I want to thank the Democracy Networks I belong to. I'm a proud member of the Democracy Group and a banner and backbone here on Substack. And I'd like to remind you to subscribe to both me and to Marlon and sign up for a paid subscription if you can for both and either of us. All right. Um, just had to get the front matter out of the way.
Housekeeping.
So, fun kind of world we're living in right now, huh?
Mm. um, I would describe it differently, but it's it's yeah, it's something.
It's sure something. You know, beyond the weather and the lack of FEMA, and I know you're having issues with your business and plants surviving 140-year snowstorm that doesn't happen in um, the Carolinas. Um, and ice, but one kind of ice in one place and the
Mm.
other kind of ice in another place. Obviously things are getting really hairy. And today I want to talk about, if I say it out loud it sounds really boring, but here's what I hope you can provide some clarity on. There's a bunch of people out there on Substack who talk about soft secession, which
Mm.
I like to call assertive federalism. Um, and they talk about, well, what if the blue states stop sending tax money to the feds until the feds fund the thing they're supposed to fund? And at first I thought, oh, that's a cool idea because we send so much more to the federal government than we get back. But then I read that the way taxes actually work is that they don't actually fund the government. And I would love it if you, okay, so here's what I heard. You can tell me whether it's a bunch of, everyone's calling each other's stuff bullshit. So I'm trying to get like a clear answer here. So what I understand from William Finnegan, who I had on a couple weeks ago, is that the federal government essentially funds programs. They like create money and they fund the programs. And tax dollars from the states backfill for that. And if the states were to not send it, it's not that the funding would stop, but that inflation would fly really high because the Fed would be creating so much money. But that states don't work like that because states need actual money in order to function.
Well, yeah, states have to actually function within budgets,
Right.
you know, and they have to, as far as I know, have, they have to have balanced budgets.
Right.
That's hard to even say, isn't
Mhm.
it? So that is not, I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on that, but my understanding of how, these money flows work is that sounds correct to me. And practically speaking, Congress or the House allocates money, and that has to be immediate, right?
Mhm.
To fund, so they can't necessarily wait on California to send their check,
Right.
to DC. So that makes perfect sense to me. The only part I'm kind of thinking about is the inflation aspect of it, because um, the Fed also controls what we call money supply,
Right.
right? So
Maybe we should back up and define money.
we
Sorry.
have to. Okay, so really nowadays it's all a function of, everything's digital. It's like, credits and debits on a spreadsheet almost. I mean, on
Mhm.
a computer. So what what the feds function, they have what they call this dual mandate, right?
This is
And
the
part of it
actual
is,
Fed, not just the
yeah,
federal
this is
government.
the Federal Reserve we're
Sure.
talking about, or I'm talking about. So their function is to, sort of keep inflation in check, and on the other side of the fence, um, optimize, job growth. And I'm probably, they have a different way of saying it, but that's basically, so that's why they're so concerned about when we get, these BLS, reports,
Mhm.
like we should get Friday, but I think it's been delayed because we had a
No.
half a day shutdown. I don't know. These
I didn't
guys are,
think we're even really counting that stuff accurately anymore.
well, maybe we can talk about that. That's to me. So here's what I would say. I don't doubt the numbers. I don't doubt the reports. See, a lot of people, I think, are just paying attention to stuff that's really been always, it's, when we get these big revisions, they
Mhm.
look kind of suspect, but that's that's just the way it works. I mean,
Right.
that is, I've been watching, BLS reporting since the 80s. You always have, this happened with Biden, it happens with every, during every administration. What's different is Trump is trying to affect the numbers, but he can't change the numbers. Okay? It's just such a broad, I mean, the bureaucracy of the BLS, you're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of employees, and what they do, the way that we get these numbers is through surveys and talking to people on the phone. I mean, it's real, like analog,
Mhm.
and so um, the idea that Trump could just sort of change the numbers, it's really a difficult proposition. But what he can do is fire the head of the, he can disrupt, you
Right.
know, he just announced a new person. I don't really, I haven't had a chance to even look at who the new person is to run the BLS, the Bureau of Labor
Labor.
Statistics. Um, he can they're underfunding the BLS and have been for years. So he can make it less efficient. He can do a lot of those kind of, similar to what he's doing in other areas. But changing the numbers or making the number, I just don't think that that's something that I just don't think Trump's trying to work that hard, to be
That's fair.
honest with you. I mean, because first of all, he doesn't really have the talent pool to come into the BLS and take over the whole thing. It's just too massive of an undertaking. But like I said, um, I'll give you an example. Look what happened in October, the first time in the history of the agency that we skipped a month. We did not get a report for now. We had subsequent reports because we had that shutdown, but we've had shutdowns before.
Right.
Typically, what happens is we fund the BLS so there's no interruptions, but they didn't do it. And this is what I mean. So when you don't have to change the numbers when there's no report.
Right.
Now,
If there's just no report, there's no
yeah.
report.
So in October, let's just back up and think of what happened in October. Well, all of the people with Doge that took the layoff or the buyout or whatever you want to call it, we used to call it, when I worked in New York, on Wall Street, we called it garden leave, where you get fired from a job, but you got like 6 months pay, so technically you're still kind of employed.
Yeah,
You
they
can't
still
go
have that in
out and get
England,
another
actually.
job and, that kind of thing. And they
Mhm.
do it in other industries too, right? Well, that's essentially what happened with Doge was they just told these people, go home and, you'll get paid through September 31st. On September 31st, there were like almost 160,000 people that were suddenly unemployed. Why don't you know that? Because we didn't have the October jobs report. Okay.
Mhm.
The October jobs report would have shown, because it's always looking back. So in October, we would have had September unemployment.
Right.
We didn't have it. So
So, yeah.
eventually that stuff sort of filters through. I mean, but honestly, December, we were still kind of figuring out just all the confusion of not having so many different economic reports in October. And then if you remember, when the shutdown was actually over, there were piecemeal. I'd never seen it happen. I don't think it's happened before, where we had piecemeal numbers and reports that were late and delayed. And so that's part of the reason why the Fed sort of froze on interest rates, because they didn't know where the hell the economy was,
Mhm.
because they didn't know, are jobs getting worse? Is
Mhm.
unemployment getting worse or better? Or is inflation getting worse or better? No way to know. If you're not getting CPI and you're not getting unemployment, you see,
Right.
so that's the way. You don't have to change the numbers when you're causing things like that to happen.
You just have to change the
Yeah.
way it's
Everything
reported.
with Trump is disruption.
Right.
Everything is disruption.
Well, and that's what a lot of people, out here in Save America land are trying to say that we should be doing on the other side, is making as much friction as we can whenever we can, non-violently.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to go back to this taxes thing because I'm still perplexed. Um, do you think it's possible for some states to withhold federal taxes uh, until some such date as they get something in return, like in an escrow account?
I've
Or
never seen it done before, but I have to believe if California, and see, that's the thing. The blue states are what keeps this damn economy going.
right.
So I don't know the mechanism of how it would ultimately work. But I'm hard pressed to think that if California just said, we're not sending money, that would have to get some, that would have to make somebody sit up and go, what the crap.
Right.
The thing to me that Republicans have over Democrats is Democrats never really hit back that hard.
Oh my gosh, it's so frustrating.
I'll give you an example of a time that they did just a few months ago. The big, evil genius plan that Trump came up with is we're gonna, redo all these districts in the middle of the 10 year,
Hmm.
and we're gonna change these districts and we're gonna do all this stuff. And they never really expected Democrats to say, well, okay, we'll do it too.
Right.
It's that easy. And look what happened. It hasn't worked out that well for Republicans.
No, that's why they're talking about stealing
Taking
the
over.
election, because it wasn't looking too good.
Okay. I mean, but that's an example of, honestly, if you just reduced it down to elementary school, the bully on the playground is the bully because nobody ever hits him back. And when somebody does, the bully's like, what the crap? And usually it exposes the weakness of the bully.
Right.
And we don't play that game nearly enough for
Well,
my
I
taste.
oh, I don't understand. Okay, we don't know how to wield power in a strong way, or haven't seemed to want to. We keep, wanting to play by the rules and keeping civility, at least at the national level.
Hmm.
I think it's different at the state level. Um, and I don't know whether all of the leaders at the national level are compromised, which is possible, or they are risk averse, also possible, or have never played hardball, also possible. But I I just don't get why Congress is sort of just sitting on their hands, and aside from a very few people, just letting it all happen.
I have a theory.
Oh, I'd love to hear your theory.
And I say this as a person in their 60s.
Hmm.
It is, we have the core leadership is of a time when Republicans and Democrats, their wives went out, the wives hung out together, they visited, had dinner with each other and all this stuff, right? And I was just talking earlier to some folks, and they're still fighting the last war. They're still reacting to, the world where just being called a liberal was, an affront. And so, the idea that they might get called woke is like just, oh,
Right.
and they just don't have the right level of fight. I mean, we've
Right.
got a guy running the Senate who cannot talk to you without a piece of paper in his hand, so he knows what his lines are. And so that's not every Democrat, of course,
No,
but
but
the
there's an
ones,
awful lot of them that are okay.
it's the leadership.
It's the
It's
leadership.
the core that is still operating in the 90s, and here we are,
And even in the 90s, Newt Gingrich was like starting a whole new game,
yep.
and they didn't know how to react then
We
either.
just have always thought that there would be a return to the mean, the center that really doesn't exist anymore. There's no center.
Mm-mm.
Because how do you meet fascism in the middle? How do you meet racism in the middle?
There,
Just be a,
right. The
if
whole
y'all want to be a
idea.
little less racist, we'll vote for your I mean, what? And they're just, we're at a point, it's an inflection point where you just have to start saying no to a lot of things. And We just have people, and look, not to ignore what you said, there's certainly some money going on in the background. There, that's driving a lot of these decisions, but also that's another problem.
Hmm.
They A lot of them are used to raising money a certain way, and when they see um, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, when they see AOC out there raising tons of money, but she's going around the system that they all rely on. They view that as a problem
Right. Well,
because they
whereas,
view that as she's taking money away from people who really need it. That Wall Street Journal actually wrote an article about this. I wrote an essay, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, where um, Marcy Kapture, I think she's in Ohio in the House. She in a close race, and then they sort of compared that against AOC. AOC's raising more money than anybody in the House
hmm
at the time. I'm sure it hasn't changed. And the thesis of the article was that these darn progressives are making the base of the party give them money when what they should be doing is giving money to these people in the middle so they can win and get independent votes. And my view on that is screw those people. They're the ones that put Trump in office.
right.
And I would much rather, and I don't know why Democrats don't do this, I would much rather focus on the, I don't know, third of the country that sat on the couch and watched and didn't vote at all. I think you've got a much better chance of giving those people, if you can give those people a reason to get up and vote, that's how Democrats really win.
Right. No, I totally get, I mean, I completely agree with you. I was at a conference and people were talking about how demo even within the Democratic Party, they're viewed as too liberal and they really need to move to the center. And I'm thinking, like, what's the center? Really? You think there's a difference between like someone who believes in human rights and somebody who doesn't? There's no middle
Right. It's the
there.
silliest thing, and I don't know why Democrats don't respond to that whole framework, that framing, because it's silly. I
It's
want you to
completely
have
silly, but they haven't even started using the word fascism until very recently. And
I
even then, it's only a couple of people. So we're not even naming what's going on. How are we going to respond to it in any useful way?
well, I mean,
Um,
think about it, Stephanie. Okay, how have we allowed being woke? So, I don't know, being smart, uh, being an expert in something, wanting people to have health care, I don't, just these
Respecting
basic
other human
things.
beings, right?
Yeah, we've just allowed Republicans to frame all these sort of basic things as being woke or DEI or I don't know, something. And I say we non fascist people,
Hmm.
the folks we're depending on to speak for us just don't do a very good job of it. And the ones that do, I use AOC as an example because I think she's the best athlete we've got
Yes,
in
I
terms
agree.
of communicating. And I don't just mean, out when she's, doing a rally. Um, Lately, I have watched her in some of the hearings. I saw one the other day where she was questioning the CEO of CVS
Oh,
and
I saw. Yeah,
did
yeah, yeah.
not like it. But there's no grandstanding. She's just prosecuting the case of why do we have these monopolies like this for healthcare?
Right. I saw that where she was like the vertical.
Yeah, yeah.
CVS owned the entire
They own the
vertical.
whole food chain, all the way from you seeing the doctor to you getting your prescription filled to where, to the price of the drug. And it's like, who thought that was a good idea?
CVS.
Well, free market capitalism's kind of respond. and I take part of the blame. I used to, I didn't do policy. I just sold the doggone securities. That's all I did. I was just following orders.
You're gonna go with that one, right,
Yeah,
Mark?
I was just following orders. I was just running a trading desk. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, money is the root of all of the policy problems. I mean, the whole idea that money in politics is so prevalent. Um, that seems like such a no-brainer, and we spend so much time railing against it. And I feel like, okay, that's a given. Let's move on in some ways. Like,
Yeah.
but um, you know, I was talking to Amanda Littman last week, and she was talking about, the gerontocracy in Congress and how so many of the leaders have made that Chuck Schumer, uh,
Can we just say they're too old?
Chuck Schumer
I mean,
entered the Senate. I mean, entered the Congress in 1974 when I was 2 years old.
so I was doing a live stream with Arturo Dominguez.
I thought.
And he brought that very point up. And I said, "So what were you in high school?" He's like, "No, dude, that was the year I was born." This guy's in his 50s.
Right. I'm 53.
And yeah. And I mean, Chuck, I don't know of anybody else that's been a leader, on the Democratic side. I don't know anybody else other than Chuck Schumer. I think I don't know when I know he started in the House, but as long as I've been paying attention, it's been Chuck Schumer.
Right. I mean, before that, it was Harry Reid, and he played
Oh,
hardball.
yeah, that's right. Harry Reid was a different kind of guy, though.
Yes, he was.
I liked Harry Reid, but remember at the time, people would criticize him for being too, you know, over the top or whatever. But boy, we could use him right now.
Right. He was from Las Vegas, and he, learned how
Yep.
to play in the big leagues.
Well, that's hardball down there.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, so we agree on all of this, and also at the state level, various states are doing good ideas. I saw a little bit in the chat about what state and localities can do, uh, and I know at least here in Massachusetts, Maura Healey is doing and a lot of it, you know, basically forbidding ICE to operate in state public spaces. No, in state non-public spaces. So they can't be in a state space, but not in the public area and like grab people and a whole bunch of other things. And blue state politics is something else entirely. I would love to get your take on and this is a race question. So let me formulate it. In Minneapolis, in particular, most of the protesters are white, which is great. There seems to me to be a couple of different fracture points within our side of the street. And I'm trying to kind of suss that out. For example, there's people on Dr. Stacey Patton who said, why are we talking about Nazis? They're the slave patrols. That's the American equivalent of what this ICE is. Nazi is just oh, sorry, I do that. I'm sorry. I talk too much with my hands.
That was like you were getting a reward for a really good question or something.
This is the second time I've done it.
I like that.
Oh,
Celebration.
if you're using a Mac, at the top of your screen, there's a little green button where you can
I'm not
enable.
going to push that button. I
I
don't push.
usually only use it for the hearts.
Oh, how cool.
But so so that's one side of the street, and I'm having and saying Europe, Nazi Germany 1937 shouldn't be what we're looking to as a model because we're not in Europe, and that was white against white. And I am thinking, and next week I'm going to talk to Rabbi Sandra Lawson, who's Black and Jewish, and another person, but I am having trouble understanding why it can't be both. I don't see anybody saying this is the slave patrols who also like talk about it being parallel to Nazi Germany, nor do I see people, many people who talk about 1937 Nazi Germany talking also about uh, the American South and the
Hmm.
whole history of anti-Black racism and slavery and all of that
Sure.
stuff. Um, is it really a fracture, or is it me just not looking hard enough?
I think it's we don't know our history very well. So what I mean by that is everything you've said is historically accurate, I guess. But what gets glossed over is okay, so where did the Nazis get the idea?
Hmm.
They
Well,
got it
yeah, they got it from Jim Crow.
literally. I went to the University of Arkansas. Um, I wish I'd known you were going to ask me this. I'll post it in the chat or in
Hmm.
on notes. The University of Arkansas not so long ago apologized because Hitler literally sent an attorney to go to school at the University of Arkansas, and he was there to study the Jim Crow South, how'd they do it, and they were there, or his whole focus was how America had done its indigenous population.
Hmm.
So, and he took that back home. So, a lot of, and I think the same thing, South Africa, apartheid, this is all, we're kind of like the origin story for a lot of this stuff. Okay. And it's not something that America is obviously doesn't want to take credit for. But yeah, people were sent here to, figure out how they're doing this. Cause look,
Hmm.
they got those blacks under control, and indigenous people. I mean, in a lot of ways, and even maybe a worse story to the extent that this was their land.
Right,
We were
95. Yes.
forcibly brought here. I just wonder what would it be like if, this was all you were already here and some people came in and just totally dispossessed you,
Hmm.
right? But that's, how colonization and empire
Right.
works, right?
Right.
So I guess when it's to me almost like a both things can be true.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I
it's
think.
kind of this. Yeah, it's just like Nazi Germany, which was just like the slave patrols. You
Hmm.
know, so yeah, I don't have a problem with either or both of those arguments, I guess. But I mean, think about this, Stephanie. I'm I'll be 68 in April. I
You don't look that
grew up
age.
thank you so much. I grew up in a time, so I went to segregated schools. It's not like this was,
Hmm.
in the black in the, some bygone era. I did not go to school, like an integrated school until I was 12 or 13. I mean,
Right.
and we didn't even it's so weird. I mean, it's surreal to think about.
Mhm.
We didn't even know, you know, as a child, you don't realize you're being like treated differently. We just figured everybody was reading out of old school books that had other people's names in them. You just didn't even think about it. But yeah, we it's just we came up, my brothers and I, just as it was just as racist as you can imagine.
Mhm. I
And
can imagine quite a
and
lot.
even when I was so into the 70s, into the 1970s, I lived in a town called Pine Bluff, Arkansas. There was still a white boys club and a black boys club.
I mean, I'm not
And
saying I don't
and
agree with you.
needless to
I just
say,
am just
the
shaking my head
country
and
club was
disgust.
segregated and all that kind of stuff too. But so this it's just not, and I think that's something that escapes a lot of white people because
Mhm.
at some point, I guess I was still on Twitter and I mentioned that when I went to high school, we had a golf team and we had a tennis team and a baseball team. I didn't even know it until like the yearbooks came out, and I'm like, oh, we got a well, the reason I didn't know, where do you play tennis? They're playing at the country
Country
club. I
club.
couldn't go there, let alone play.
Right.
And so when I was talking about this, lo and behold, there was someone who went to my high school on Twitter and they said, hey, I was on the golf team. It wasn't it wasn't racist. And I'm like, you're not
Did
black,
you
are you?
did
And
you have
and
any
I,
black
you know,
teammates?
I mean, he took affront to it, and I said, "Dude, think about it. What were there any black golfers on your team? Why do you think that was?" He didn't. It wasn't something as a white kid that he would have thought about. And it
Mhm.
doesn't make him a bad guy, but
Um,
then he just sort of took a step back and goes, "Wow, I
right.
guess, I guess it was a segregated team."
Right.
And that was a public school.
Yeah, I mean, I have other conversations and rants and conversations that I want to have about, especially since it's Black History Month, but any month of the year, about how Hollywood and collective memory of white Christians in particular have sanitized enslavement and Jim Crow and the Civil War, um, in order to, you know, feel like, oh, it wasn't that bad. When, I was having a conversation this week when I, I kind of threw somebody off when I said, Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, they talk about her being his mistress. He was raping her since she was 14. Like she could
She
have
was a
said no,
child. I mean,
right?
how's that different than the Epstein file? I mean, except for the fact that he owned her.
Right. And
I
that
mean,
he was particularly raping her to create more children that he could own. And he's the one that came up with the whole, well, if we can't import them, we need to make them uh,
wow.
to keep our wealth. There's a whole he wrote a whole treatise on
Well, I
this.
mean, when you stop and think of just again, I mean, I mean, he's just creating inventory for,
Mhm.
and literally birthing wealth, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Horrifying.
I get people occasionally that try to make the comparison, and it's really, yeah, it's kind of a red herring. Oh well, other countries had slavery too.
Mm-mm.
Slavery is as old as people,
Right.
but until America sort of perfected it, it was always based on who lost the war.
Right.
Who were the losers? And the losers, okay, and it was not always permanent. And
Right.
it's
It was
damn true.
reversible.
And it's certain, yeah, you could buy your way out of it. You could, servitude, and maybe there's, X number of years and you're done. But it never was hereditary, where
No.
it passed on, to your children and their children and so on. And the other part that's interesting, um, I never thought of this until I read the 1619 Project. And there are different chapters about different aspects of this history.
Hmm.
They changed how lineage works, like you inherit through your father, right?
Hmm.
And in Europe, think about it, women really could not inherit. Well, for slavery, they changed it so that instead of the father, it was the mother.
Hmm.
That way, the white father who's raped this woman could not be held responsible. That child could not inherit.
Hmm.
I mean, that's freaking deep if you think about it.
Fun fact, Judaism, being Jewish, according to Jewish law, flows through the mother.
Hmm. I did not know that
Because,
about
yes.
Judaism. I did know, I mean, in a lot of the indigenous cultures, it's the same,
Right.
matriarchal. The Cherokee Nation, I think, is
Yeah.
that way.
But for different reasons. The reason that Judaism is you're Jewish if your mother is Jewish. It's other things go through the father. Is you know who the mother is? Because
You,
there was a lot
yeah,
for the exact
you
same
know
reason.
it. Or as we used to say in Arkansas, mama's baby, daddy's baby. Yeah, you know
Right.
exactly who mom is.
Hmm. Exactly. Because you don't know when violence and rape and all of that kind of stuff
Hmm.
is going to
And
happen and
I would
how and where.
imagine it's that way for very similar reasons that go back to biblical, times.
Hmm. Right.
So yeah, I guess if it's all about slavery, isn't it? In a way.
Yeah. Well, it's all about power and powerlessness and actual human bodies and enslavement and also degradation and uh, dehumanization. And so, one thing that keeps tripping me up right now, and as I said, I'm going to have a conversation about this next week, is this the idea that uh, it's an interrogation of whiteness,
Mm.
which is that white people, not that white people are all the same. We know that's not true in terms of ideology or whatever, but that there are degrees of whiteness. And some people, white Christians, are white until they get involved in, being on the defending Black or brown people. Um, White Jews are only conditionally white for a very little time, like until until something happens, whatever. But uh, there's a lot of discussion about how white are Jews because back in Charlottesville, remember that was the first thing. Anti-Jewish hatred basically is at. So this goes round and round and round. Anti-Jewish hatred is also at the center of anti-Black racism because the theory goes is that there are Jews in the background pulling all of the economic strings
Oh no,
that
not
make it inevitable or reasonable to enslave or um, or be what do you call it discriminatory toward Black people, which
mm,
is both anti-Jewish and anti-Black because like it takes away agency from just about everybody except for the white Christian men. Um, so it's so intertwined, and that's why the conversation about Nazi Germany versus slave patrols is fascinating, but also alarming to me in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard a lot of mentions in the last, I don't know, several months, years, about the Holocaust with not a single mention of Jews. So,
How does that work?
right? Right?
Okay.
So, like, this whole question of what's white and, like, leaving black and brown folks aside, what does whiteness confer upon you and what is backwashed into whiteness? Like the idea that that Germany was about white people and white people is just not accurate because they didn't see Jews as white. So,
Whiteness is a made up thing
of
anyway.
course it is.
And it's
So is, I mean,
conferred
yes,
on whoever, well, no, it's not conferred on whoever you want to disenfranchise.
exactly.
I mean, I so okay, here's a funny story. And it's true. Um I'm trying to think of the name of the movie. It's Killers of the Flower Moon. I think I'm getting that right. It's a movie from a couple of years ago. Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, a bunch of people in it. It was about the Osage tribe in the early 20s, I guess, maybe 30s. Essentially, what had happened is, this is in Oklahoma. They found all this oil on indigenous land, right?
Well, isn't
And
most of Oklahoma actually indigenous land?
well, most of yeah,
No,
yeah.
but I mean,
But no, what that was sort of where, Trail of Tears, that's where
mhm,
everybody got pushed to, was
yes.
Oklahoma. Um, what doesn't really get mentioned in that film is that, when you're talking about the Trail of Tears, so the five civilized tribes, which, Cherokee, and I forget the other ones, but the important thing is when that migration, the Trail of Tears
Yeah,
happened,
George,
a lot of black people were in that,
mhm.
because in their effort to assimilate, the five civilized tribes realized, well, we got to get some slaves so that they will see that we're trying to assimilate into being considered white.
Oh my God.
Okay. So fast forward to, the time that this moved. So you've got a tribe of people that, by virtue of just sitting on top of all this oil, are filthy rich. Some of those people were black in particular. What happened was, um, you know, these plots of land were just sort of divvied up after the end of the Civil War, and black people who were freedmen that had been property of indigenous people also got plots of land. It
Mhm.
was shitty land, rocky. Nobody, and lo and behold, years go by, oil gets discovered. As a result, this black girl who's like 13 ends up being one of the richest people in the country because she inherits or gets allocated a plot of land. Each individual parent gets
Mhm.
land, and it turns out the dad, they don't have the money to pay taxes on this. So what do? They lease it out to an oil company.
Mm.
Next thing you know, this black kid is the most wealthy black woman in America. Okay, true story. They're
Mhm.
actually making a very, very sanitized movie about this, which
Isn't
is
there
a
a
whole.
TV show about it?
I haven't seen a television show, but there's a movie that's if it hasn't come out, it's coming out shortly. But here's the funny part, and it's back a long way back to your point. This girl had so much money, she's buying stuff. She's going on shopping trips abroad. She's
Mhm.
doing all the things. She's riding on trains. The legislature votes to make her white so that she doesn't have, so that she can have like a car all to herself, like a white woman, so that she can ride at the front of the train. They literally make this girl a white person on pay. So that's how, what, fungible whiteness is. You can just
Well,
bestow it
right,
on anybody. And she
right.
was, believe me, she was not, she wasn't even like able to pass for white. She's darker than me. But yeah, they voted and they made this girl a white girl or a white woman, person,
Right.
whatever. How
I
crazy is
mean,
that?
we could get into the whole one drop rule and the whole, uh,
We can.
opposite of.
I've got stories. I'm from Arkansas. So,
We're
well,
not going to. We are almost at the end of our time
oh, are
together.
we? How can that be? Oh no. I'll
Um,
tell you this. My great grandfather, um, if you saw him walking down the street, you would never think that he was a white guy. So I've got, um, my mother's the youngest of four, and my grandmother's sisters. You just would never know. So I've got relatives that, that migrated to Michigan and places like that to, the Great
mhm,
Migration.
mhm.
And when they would come for the family reunion, it was so confusing to people that would, because you got all these people and half of them are like me, and the other part is like blue eyes, blonde hair,
Wow.
just not, and they're all from the same, lineage. But, it's funny how the genetics work. I
It
mean, but that
is.
lets you know, right? I mean, so what's white?
Yeah, white's an idea. And I haven't been following the chat. There's probably some uh good stuff in there. Um, and there was no concept of race in the ancient world. No, but it was different.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
like I said, it was, if you lost the war, guess what? You're a slave. And I mean, the idea of free labor as like the, sort of the driving principle for a business model, which essentially is what America is. It's a business model, right? If you think
well,
about
yeah.
it at the core, right?
Well, yeah,
And
the
so,
core, I mean, the first colonies were businesses.
yeah, I mean, so that's how you end up with it. It's not an accident that the South is poor, because the entire business model of the South depended on free labor,
And
right?
extraction. Hmm.
Hmm. And, or, you know, at will. That's why think about the whole concept of at will employment.
Right.
That's what drives, folks not getting paid.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we have to think about something that's not quite as depressing.
Depressing.
I'm gonna go through a little bit of the chat to see if there's somebody who says something that we can uh, be not depressed by. Um,
I'm all for it.
right now, U.S. camps hold 3 times the number of people Nazi Germany held. I'm actually I uh, I'm not sure about that. I think that's not a useful argument. Nor is the first people taken to the Holocaust weren't Jews. That's also not a useful argument because all those people were killed, but there was a specific
Hmm.
hatred. Uh, some people even blame Jews for trying to get rid of Black people through the birth control pill and abortions. They saw the inventor of birth control pills and that Margaret Sanger was Jewish. Um, Eric Lulov gave us both happy faces. Thanks, Eric. I'm talking to him next week, so you guys come back. Um, so anyway, happy things. I got to talk to you.
Well, same here. Back at you.
No, I mean, this community is, I think, one of the most unexpected things that happened
It
to
is,
me
isn't it?
last year.
I think a year ago we didn't know each other.
No,
Not even 6 months ago, maybe.
I think I started being aware. I think it was just coalescing really at that point, but uh,
Yeah.
in August, maybe something
Yeah,
like
we
that.
talked before. It's been a few months ago.
Right, but
Definitely
then
remember laughing.
there's Walter, and then there's Nick, and then there's
Yep.
Arturo, and then there's like it's kind of amorphous and globulous, blob like, but it's community, and
It is. This is how we win.
this is how we win. This is how we win. So, thank you all. 298 people in the chat.
Wow.
That may be a record for me, and not for you, I'm sure.
I think it probably is. We're a good team. They
We're a
came to
good
see us
team.
work.
We got to do this more often, Marlon.
Absolutely.
All
Anytime.
right. All right. Take care. Bye, everyone in the chat. This is how we win.